All right, guys. So, like 15 people have messaged me last night asking for a spec review on the new XMR 850 and XMR 1000 Outlander platforms. So, background, I bought the XMR 700, the first Gen 3 XMR to come out, as soon as I could, and I've been beating the crap out of it. I love it. I think it's a good platform. I think it kicks the crap out of the Gen 2 in a lot of ways. So, I do have some experience with this platform, and my XMR 700 is a lot closer than you guys would think to these, higher end 850, 1000 platforms. Obviously, it only has one cylinder, so I do have some experience with this platform. Now, there's a couple other videos that Can-Am released. I tried to watch them this morning, and it's just such fuckboy bullshit. I could not even get through the first 2 minutes of it. So I'm not going to give you much of fluff. I'm going to try to tell you the specs that actually matter from the perspective of an actual engineer who actually has ridden a lot of the Gen 3 models. So let me dive into the specs, tell you what the differences are, and give you my opinions and my concerns and all that stuff. And of course, yes, I'm going to buy the 850 as soon as I get my hands on one. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about what's different between the 850 and the 1000. And the answer is nothing. So we don't need to look at both the spec sheets because they're identical. What's really interesting here is that they are both 999cc dual overhead cam V twins. Now, dual overhead cam, that is new. My 700 dual overhead cam, so I was hoping we'd be getting a dual overhead cam V twin, and we did. So that's badass. That's how we're getting 101 horsepower now. Dual overhead cams flow air better, better individual tuning, intake exhaust timing, yada, yada, yada. No one cares. But dual overhead cam is good. And they're both dual overhead cam. They're both 1000cc V twins. So why are we calling one an 850 and one a 1000? I don't know. Can-Am started doing that on the Gen 3 platform. So there's a Gen 3 Outlander 500 and there's an Outlander 700, but they're both 650cc single cylinders. So same thing we see here. Can-Am trying to have more commonality, but still differentiate their product range and gives the guys who want to throw away money an option, like the 1000, or the reasonable people like me an option, the 850. So the 1000 is a lot more expensive, but it's the same engine. It's just detuned. Now, I don't know if it's different cams, smaller intake, definitely different computer tuning, but same displacement here, which is something that Can-Am left out of most of their videos. I don't think they want you to know. I don't know. It's right there in the spec sheet. Anyway, they both have the extra low gear that I'm always whining about that they used to leave off the 850 XMR, so that's great. They both have the true front locker. That's great. And if you look down at suspension here, they got Showa shocks on them now. But what's interesting here is that they limited the front suspension on the 850 and the 1000 to 7.5 inches. So mine has more suspension travel than that. We'll get to that in a minute. My point right here is that all of the specs for the 850 and the 1000 are identical except for the horsepower. So they're even the exact same estimated dry weight, which means nothing. Can-Am lies about it all the time. 1,071 pounds. They're the same wheelbase, same fuel capacity. Okay, so I think I beat that horse to death. We're going to stop looking at the 1000 and we're going to compare the XMR 700 to the XMR 850 because, like I just said, all the specs are the same for the 850 and the 1000. So obviously, I'm going to get the 850. It's a better deal. It has the same displacement. If you look at the torque, it's got almost the exact same torque. So it's the one I'm going to buy because I'm, reasonable. So if we go through here and look at it, my 700's got 50 horsepower. This 850, which is really 1000, has 82 horsepower. That's awesome. We're also going from 41 foot-pounds of torque to 66 foot-pounds of torque. So this thing is going to be an absolute monster. Really excited to ride one of these. It's going to have, all that crazy wheelie power you're used to with the XMR 850. And by the way, got low gears now. So that's awesome. With the Gen 2, if you wanted low gears on 850, you had to swap to the other transmission basically. This already has the good transmission. So we're talking about transmissions. This platform has these two have the same transmission. They're both going to have, I call it the HG7 transmission. It's the new transmission that Can-Am came out with when they introduced the P clutches. So same transmission in this 850 as my 700. It shifts really easy. It's been very reliable, very smooth. I like it a lot, so that's good to see. Also, it has the P-drive clutches, which is awesome. Those clutches have been very smooth. And the super low gear, I've never had the bell slip on my 1000. I've had it wet, and I can still drive it out of holes. That's how good the clutches are. Extra low gear on both of them, and the gearing's really good. My XMR 700, I was turning 33-inch Aztecs pretty effectively stock, and then I did the HG7 gear swap and got even a little bit lower gear, which maybe we can do on the 850. There's a little gear case right here on the side of the transmission. You can basically throw the gears in it. Super sweet. Look down at suspension. My 700 has 9 inches in the front. The more expensive 850 only has 7.5 inches. So where did that 1.5 inch suspension travel go? Well, they went up to 30-inch tires that looked to me a little more of a square profile, and they were probably having some rubbing on this bar. So in order to keep that from happening, this is the support bar for the floorboard. You see it right here. By the way, the two frames are going to be identical. Can-Am is all about commonality. Everything I can see, the control arms, the frame mounts, differential mounts, they all look the same. So I think Can-Am had some rubbing, so they put some fatter bump stops on the shocks to limit the up travel on the front of the XMR, which sucks. I wish they'd have just raked the control arms forward. But yeah, my cheapo XMR 700 has more travel than the premium XMR 850 1000. So that's interesting. Tires, we talked about that. I had 30 or 28 Swamp King stock. This comes on some different 30-inch Swamp Kings, which is cool. Brakes, the new 850 1000 has dual rear brakes versus my single rear brakes. I don't know if that really matters to anybody, but that is a slight difference. We go to specs and capacities. Let me blow this up for you some more. So dry weight, I'm 876. This is 1071. So it's a lot heavier. And let's talk about that for a minute, because where is that weight, right? I mean, it's the same frame, like we said. Yeah, it's got extra cylinder and 2 extra camshafts, but dude, that's a lot of weight. So I think they were dumb, and they did what Highlifter does in the 1000. They added this bumper growth up here, which not only increases weight, but also increases center of gravity, right? Because you got this big, heavy tube work up high and this winch up high. Look what's right down here, guys. That's the same winch mount this one has. It's built into the bumper. Put the winch where it belongs, keep it down low, keep the center of gravity low, don't add all this extra BS. This thing's going to be a lot longer, and this thing's going to break a lot of people's rear windows in their pickup trucks. They also added a bumper back here. So it looks like it's got a beefier steel bumper type thing, and that's going to add some weight. It looks like a plastic rack versus my metal rack, but I've had that rack off. It's pretty light. The radiator support looks identical. They've changed the styling on it, but these bars are the same. So yeah, I'm not really sure where they added that much weight. I'm guessing these tires are extremely heavy. They do have a big sidewall wrap that tends to add a lot of weight. So maybe a lot of the weight just came from the tires. As far as the other specs though, it's very similar. So the width, I'm at 48.8. This one's at 49.7. I think it's the same control arms. I think they just added some wider offset tires. But the wheelbase, is within 0.2 inches, 53 inches, 52.8. Ground clearance is really close. Seat height's pretty close. Somehow my XMR 700 actually has a higher seat height. I don't know if that's a typo, because how would my seat almost be an inch higher if it's on smaller tires? Whatever. Towing capacity is the same. Fuel capacity is the same. Storage capacity is the same. But yeah, the dry weight is significantly higher on this 850. So when I buy it, the first thing I'll do is sell this front bumper, put this winch down here where it belongs, and that'll save some weight and help the center of gravity. Features. So we've got a bigger display. Cool. We got a phone storage and USB charger. Mine also had a USB charger. We got the fancy key. It comes with a winch. Mine didn't come with a winch, so that's obviously, there's some weight there. Full skid plate. Yeah, mine had that too. Front mud bumper with winch mount. Yeah, so I don't know. As far as the specs I actually care about, let me blow this one up and just talk about the 850 now. I obviously am excited about the power and the torque. I am a little concerned about the packaging. Putting a V-twin into an ATV has always been an engineering challenge, especially a dual overhead cam V-twin, right? So where are those cylinder heads actually at? So you've got one leaned back this way and you got one leaned forward this way. And the really tricky thing is here with these big cylinder heads between your legs, where do you route the exhaust? All of my Can-Am's V-twins I've had like plastic melting issues. In the summer, they were incredibly hot to ride. So I'm interested to see how they packaged all this with the exhaust shields and stuff. If you've ever hydrolocked a V-twin Can-Am, you know that getting the spark plugs out will make your hands bleed to unhydrolock it. And it's going to be the same thing here, because you have to have so many heat shields to stuff that much motor between your legs. Now, the radiator setup on here is phenomenal. It's the same as my 700. The air comes in here through the radiator and blows down, so it keeps it kind of away from the rider. Whereas, like the Highlifter editions blow the heat out the sides, and you feel that heat on a hot day in Florida, trust me. The snorkels here are a little taller than my XMR 700, but I bet they just raised up the engine intake. The belt intake is a U, and I bet that U is the same part number. Once we get the spec sheets for the parts, I'll go through all that, of course. So you're going to have to do snorkel risers on it like I did, which is kind of a pain in the ass, honestly, to have all those pipes, way up in your face. But you got to do it. This is not a motor you want to be hydrolocking, even though, yeah, never mind, different discussion. But yeah, so like I was saying with the frame and stuff, like everything I can see here with the frame and the control arms and stuff, it all looks very similar to my my XMR 700. So I don't think they changed much. I think they put the V-twin motor, they threw some shocks on it, and they threw a winch bumper and some fancy plastics. I think this is actually a lot closer than people think to the 700. Can-Am's trying to market it as like an all-new thing because that's what they do to get hyped up and stuff. But I mean, we all knew it was coming when they made, the 700 and the 500s come out. We all knew that this platform was eventually going to take over the Gen 2 platform with the trailer arm suspension. That's another thing to talk about. A lot of people were sad to see the trailer arm suspension go. I think this double wishbone platform rides significantly better. Yes, you have a little bit less ground clearance because you have to drag, 4 control arms through the mud instead of 2 trailing arms. But my 700 handles very large tires very well with not a ton of suspension deflection, and it turns them good and it rides good. So I think it's a great suspension platform. I wonder what they did with the engine mounts. So everyone's been breaking the engine mounts on these. If you had that issue, check out my other video. We figured out you could put some snowmobile engine mounts on there, and those are working a lot better. So I wonder if they upgraded the engine mounts for this V-twin, because if my 50 horsepower motor was breaking them, this 82 horsepower motor is definitely going to break the engine mounts. But yeah, that's all I got to say about it for now. As soon as I can find those parts diagrams, I'll go through all that and I'll compare the part numbers to my 700 and tell you if I find any more differences. Of course, the clutching's going to be slightly different, things like that. I mean, like meaningful differences, like, hey, it's got a bigger rear diff. I don't think it's going to. My 700's got incredibly beefy diffs. They've been working well, so I don't really think they need to be upgraded, but maybe they put bigger drive shafts, something like that. If you guys do come across those parts diagrams, feel free to comment them below, and I'll go through and make a similar video comparing that stuff. And hopefully this answers the questions you guys were messaging me. And yeah, like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about this machine in the comments below.